Stepping in for Steve today, Josh asked me if I could just give a basic premise of where we are for liver regeneration or liver bioengineering. And to make a long story short, it's going to take a village to do this. The liver is probably the easiest organ that we will be able to regenerate or develop in a dish. For the most part, the liver doesn't have much of an architecture per se as compared to the kidney or the heart. It's a sponge. Blood comes in, filters down through the hepatocytes, and blood goes out. It is just a very easy organ to deal with. Which button goes forward? White one? Okay, so here is the group of people that are on the committee, Steve being the chair and everything. So I know Raj is here, and I know Eric is here. I think they're both over there on that side of the room. But we've got a good group here of people who are really understand liver and trying to understand how to make this thing work. So, not to reiterate a point, but we are looking at about 115,000 people on the transplant list. We don't do hardly enough to get these numbers down because we don't have the organs available to do it. And every 10 minutes, someone added to the national transplant list becomes waiting, and 20 people die each year on the list waiting for an organ. So these numbers are sort of staggering, but I got this from Enos last week when Josh asked me, but since we've been looking at the number of liver transplants, and I got that highlighted in red there. You can see that since 1988 to 2018, we've done about 156,000 liver transplants, but we lose about 50,000, 55,000 patients a year to liver failure or liver disease. So we are nowhere close to being ready to actually get those numbers down. So in this, I came up with this little stair step of what are we really facing? And in reality, I think we're all facing the same questions. You know, what are we going to use for a scaffold for material? Is it going to be man-made? Is it going to be natural, nature-made? Defining a cell source. Now, for the liver, we just can't go out and grow 1 billion cells or 100 million cells or whatever out of grins and giggles. It takes a lot of effort to grow that many cells, and hepatocytes don't like to grow in culture. So we have to define the cell source. Is it going to be porcine? Is it going to be human? Is it going to be iPS cells derived from hepatocytes, so on and so forth. So we got to define the cell source, and then we got to define what functional design is going to be the best way for this to work. The liver is a unique organ. It can regenerate itself quite easily, and I'll show you this in a minute. And then the biggest problem that we all have to face, and Jeff talked about it today, and as well as Harold did, it's the revascularization of the organ. You know, 8 days of having the vascular system work is monumental, but it's not a lifetime. And so we've got to get that plumbing worked out. So as David said last night, you know, looking for something that in the midterm or the interim could work, you know, I think the aspect of using, do we have a pointer on this? Hold the top one down? Oh, okay. Oh, cool, virtual, there we go. But is to define or develop, you know, something that can be used as dialysis for the liver. We have dialysis for the kidney, but we have nothing for the liver. And if we can define something like this, and this is introducing this midpoint, this first milestone that we can use to actually help patients, bridge them to a transplant or actually bridge them until their own liver can repair itself. So these are the different materials that we have, man-made, human, made from different starting sources. We've got natural ones up there. This is actually from a porcine liver that we've been using in our lab that we can actually decellularize, and you can actually see how well the vascular system is intact and everything. And Jeff showed this earlier this morning. And you can actually see from ECM or SEM, you've got a very intact architecture here. And when we actually, that was the pig, this is rat that we had done. And you can actually see on the far lower right-hand corner, this is actually a portal triad that is still intact. It's got the ductular channel there, it's got the hepatic artery and the hepatic vein all sitting right there. So it's all there. It's just trying to get the cells back in has been the problem. And Jeff alluded to that earlier this morning. So liver regeneration, and because I come out of a Greek lab, I have to show this. So if my mentor, George Michalopoulos, calls up and say, yeah, he showed Prometheus. But liver regeneration is a very unique tool that we have in the liver world. It can repair itself quite easily. The hepatocytes have the ability to divide thousands of times. And if you read some of the literature, earlier literature came out that one hepatocyte can divide 10 times 10 to the 10 times to the 8th time. One rat has gone through 17 partial hepatectomies. So it has the ability, the hepatocytes themselves have the ability to grow in vivo. Take them out, and they don't want to play in the sandbox very well. So understanding how the liver repairs itself is very important to us and how we're going to be able to design and build this artificial liver tissue that we can actually transplant. So right now, the current technology that we have for dialysis is this device right here. It's called an ELAD. It's produced by Vital Therapies, and they're in San Diego. But it has a 4% efficiency effectiveness. So it's not working very well. And it's because it's not working very well that we lose so many patients. The one on the left shows what it looked like in the first generation. The one on the right is their second generation. They actually got it down to a cart, but the patient is still not mobile. He still has to, or she is still tied to a bed and can't do anything about it. And the way it works is that they have the hepatocytes or the liver tissue outside these tubes, these little fibers, hollow fibers, and so it has to go through passive diffusion 4 different times. Out of the tube, into the hepatocyte, out of the hepatocyte, back into the tube. And that's not how the liver works. The liver is, again, bathed in blood the entire time. It holds 25% of the cardiac output at any given moment. So this is what I'm proposing, or this is my little idea that I'm doing, is that I'm building these columns full of decellularized liver that I've recellularized with hepatocytes derived from iPS cells. And from that, before my lab shut down last year, I was getting ready to start gearing things up. I was starting to make larger and larger columns, but this is just sort of a mock-up of what I've done. But I think if we look at it from a standpoint of how the liver works, we can actually have this blood flow through the columns, down through the hepatic tissue, and back out. Now there's some issues that come along that if this thing works at 100% efficiency, that is 700 grams of hepatic tissue that will keep anybody in this room alive indefinitely. But if it starts producing as well as I think it will, then I'm going to have issues with bile, because there's not going to be a biocannular system in there to actually get rid of the bile. So I'll have to figure that one out as we go along. And this is sort of what I want to see in 2020, is that we can use the device that I use this picture because I was actually presenting this to the DoD a few months ago. But basically attached to the side of the patient, a central line out, central line in, and the blood will flow through under gravity and their own pressure of the patient, and it gives them mobility. It gives them 700 grams of tissue, functional in all of the necessary means of maintaining homeostasis, and it will act as a dialysis type of device for the liver. And as I've told people in the roundtable we had, you can keep you alive without a brain, a heart, a lung, a kidney. You lose your liver, you're gone in 3 weeks. It's just that important. So I think the liver is the most important organ in the body right now. So my last slide is that, as we go out having ourselves a little drink tonight, just remember, moderation, but we've got a long ways to go. And we have a lot of the same issues that everybody else has been talking about is vascularization, cell type, and matrix. Thank you.